Hi, my name is Mr. Pa, and I'm an elementary math teacher development specialist. Before we begin today, I would like for you to grab something to write with, such as a pen, pencil, marker, anything that you can write with, and something to write on, such as your math journal, math notebook, or even notebook paper. Go ahead and grab those things, and then we will start our lesson. So today our lesson is going to be on data. Data, more specifically, we're going to talk about dot plots, frequency tables, and how to use the keys to get data and create these different charts and tables. So our objective for today is I can construct a dot plot with frequencies of one or multiple counts per dot using data represented by whole numbers, decimals, and fractions. And before we get into the lesson, let's review our vocabulary. We have a frequency table, a table that shows how often an item, a number, or a range of numbers occur. Frequency table. Then we have a dot plot, a graph that uses dots to show data is clustered. Dot plot. And then we have key, the part of a graph that tells what numerical amount each picture on a pictograph represents. Key. So, if you want, you can pause the video, write down the vocabulary words as I just showed you, and then we're going to jump into our lesson of data. I'm going to go ahead and clear my board, and then we're going to get into an engage activity. Okay, so I've cleared my board, and now what I have here is just color representation of students' favorite colors. I did a survey of a class and wanted to see their favorite colors among the colors of blue, green, orange, and red. And now what I have to do is create a chart. So whenever we're doing anything with data or graphs, we have to make sure we have a chart to collect our data. So let me go ahead and create a chart. And then if you would like, follow what I'm doing so you can create a chart in your journal or whatever you're writing with, so that way you can do the work with me. So to start off, I'm gonna draw a big rectangle. And then I have to split this into 3 columns. 1 column, 2, and 3. And now I have to add my categories. What we're going to have is favorite colors, tally, and in frequency. Favorite colors, tally, so we have our favorite colors, tally, and frequency. Now since we have 4 colors, I have to create 4 rows to mark these colors. So to create those 4 rows, I just drew 3 lines to separate 4 rows. Now let's collect our data. Again, we said we had the colors blue, red, green, and orange. Now let's see, how many blues do we have? Let's count. 1, 2, 3. So I'm gonna draw 3 tally marks. 1, 2, 3. Now let's see how many reds do we have. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now let's see how many greens we have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. And remember, when we do the 5th tally mark, we cross out the 4s to make 5, and now we have our 6. Now let's count the oranges. 1, 2. Now, what we have to do is change the tally marks to a frequency. And now all that is writing the number of how many tally marks we have. So we had 3 blue, 4 red, 6 green, and 2 oranges. So now that you know how to do this should help you along with the rest of the lesson, so that way we know how we're collecting data, changing it from a tally to frequency, and whatever we're going to get into. So that way you will be prepared for the rest of this lesson. Okay, so I have my math story here. Let's go ahead and read it together. A 4th grade class conducted a survey to determine their shoe size. They created the following frequency table to organize their data. So I have the frequency table right here. If you would like, go ahead and pause the video so that way you can copy down this frequency table into your math journal or notebook paper, whatever you're writing on. So just pause the video, go ahead and write this down just in case it's too hard to see when I put it back on the whiteboard. Okay, so now that you may have this in your journal, let's talk about it. What we have here are different shoe sizes. 5, 5.5, 6, 6.5, 7, and 7.5. And then we have the tally marks, like how we did earlier in our gauge part of the lesson. So now we have to, what do you think we have to do? We have to change our tally marks to a frequency. And in order to do that, all we do is count the tally marks. Remember what we did earlier? Let's go ahead and do that now. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. 1, 2, 3. 0. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then 1. So now that we have our frequency, it will be easier for us to do the problem that we need to do for this this graph, or for this chart. So a question is, how can this data be represented from this frequency table to a dot plot? So how can we change this frequency table to a dot plot? I'm about to show you. So I'm going to clear my board, and then I'll show you how we can change this information to a dot plot. So I went ahead and cleared our math story and moved my chart to the left so that way you can see what I'm about to do in order to change this frequency table into a dot plot. Well, the first thing that I have to do is I'm going to draw a number line. And what I want you to do is go ahead and draw a number line in your journal also. And the reason I kept my frequency tables here because it allows me to look back so that way I know the numbers that I need to put on my number line. So what I have to do next is go ahead and put my shoe size on the bottom. Before I do that, what I'm going to do is label shoe size. So I'm going to start with my 5, 5.5, 6, 6.5, 7, 7.5. So there was my number line, and this will help me create a dot plot with from this frequency table. So how many students did I survey? Let's go ahead and count how many students we have. In order to do that, we just count how many tally marks we have all together, or we can add our frequencies together. So let's go ahead and start. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So we have 15 students that we surveyed. So that lets me know that when I draw my dots, I have matched, that I have 15 total dots. So let me go ahead and draw my dots. 5, shoe size 5 is 4 dots. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll pause right here for a minute. You know what I need to add to this to make it easier for anyone else that looks at my my dot plot? I need to add a key. So up here, I'm gonna write, actually I'm gonna do it down here. Key. 1 dot equals 1 student. That lets me know that this dot represents 1 student. Sometimes you will see that a dot can represent 2, 3, 4, or however many students you want it to represent, but that's what the key is for. It's for you to identify what these dots represent. Let's continue adding our frequency numbers to our number line. 2 for 5.5, 3 for 6, 6.5 had 0, so I'm going to put nothing here. 7 was 5. 4, 5. 7.5 was 1. So what I have here now is my dot plot. So this lets me, my number line with my dot plots there. So that lets me, that allows me to answer any other questions that I may come across as we continue with our problem. So go ahead, pause the video if you weren't following along with me to copy this down. And then we're going to move on to our first question. Okay, so what you see now is that I've got rid of our frequency table because we don't need it anymore. The reason we don't need it anymore is because we've already transferred the information or the data from the frequency chart to the dot plot. And because we did that, all we need is this right here, this number line with the dot plot with the dots on there. So our first question is, how many total students did we survey? So if you were paying attention earlier, we kind of did that already with the frequency table, but how can we do it with our dot plot? Simple. We know that our key says that 1 dot equals 1 student. So all we have to do is count how many dots we have to determine how many students we have. So let's just count to make sure to see if we got it, if our information from the frequency table to the dot plot matches. We said earlier we had 15 students based on the frequency table. Let's make sure we copy this correctly then. That means we should have 15 dots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. If I didn't have 15, that means I have to go back to my frequency table to see what may be the misunderstanding from my frequency table to dot plot. I may have messed up somewhere if this didn't match the number of students there. Let's go ahead and move on to our next question. How many students have a shoe size smaller than 7.5? So let me step back so you can look at this from a full perspective. So we have 7.5 here. We want to know how many students have it smaller than 7.5. So we're not going to count the 7.5. We want to know what's smaller than 7.5. So in order for us to do that, I have to look at everything from here all the way here. So that lets me know that I'm looking for anything that's on that side of the red line. I'm not going to include this 1 dot here because that's not part of what they're asking. So all I have to do to answer this question is count how many dots are from this red line all the way to that side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So I know that there are 14 students who have a shoe size smaller, 14 students that have a shoe size smaller than 7.5. But what's another way I could have done this was, I remember I had 15 total students and I see that I have 1 here. I could have simply just done 15 minus 1 to get 14 students. So whenever you have this kind of problem or this kind of question, it's best to use that dot plot that they give you or you have to create and draw a line to show you what side what dots you're gonna be working with in order to solve for that question. And we're gonna move on to the next question. Before I do that, I'm just going to go ahead and clear my board, and then I'm gonna clear the red line so that way we can use the same number line, our same dot plot for us to answer the next question. Okay, so I've cleared the lines that I had earlier, and we're gonna move on to our next question. Our next question says, how many students have a shoe size larger than 5.5, but less than 7? So just like what we did earlier, I'm going to draw lines to help me to see where on the graph that I'm going to use, what information on the graph I'm going to use to help me solve this problem. So I know I'm going to look larger than 5.5. So it's anything that's larger than 5.5. It doesn't say 5.5 and larger, it just says larger than 5.5. So I'm not going to count 5.5 or 5 because we're not looking for anything that's 5.5 or lower. We're looking for larger than. So I'm going to draw a line to separate that and draw an arrow going that way. So I'm going to say it again. I drew a line up right here, right after the 5.5, because we're doing larger than 5.5, and an arrow pointing that way to let me know I'm looking at the larger shoe sizes. And then less than 7. So what I'm going to do is go to the 7. And again, it doesn't say to include the 7, it just says less than 7, not 7 and less. So I'm going to go in front of the 7 because that's less than 7, draw a line up and an arrow going this way. And that lets me know that I'm going to focus on anything in this area right here. I'm just going to focus on this area because that's larger than 5.5 and less than 7. So let's go ahead and count how many dots there are within this area. 1, 2, 3. So to answer this question, we only have 3 students. That have a shoe size larger than 5.5 and less than 7. So remember, the way we did this with the lines, it just helps us really organize our work and make sure that it's nice and neat, because instead of just looking at the chart without the lines, which would be like this, I could mistakenly count the 2 dots here for 5.5 and not realize it, or I could accidentally count these 5 dots here and not realize it. So that's just something to help us keep our work organized and just make sure that we're focused on a certain area based on what the question is asking. So again, let's go ahead and move on to the next question. So our next question is, how many more students have a shoe size of 5 and 7 than a shoe size of 5.5 and 7.5? This is going to be a multi-step problem because it says 5 and 7. So that lets us know we're going to have to find a total amount of 5 and 7 and a total amount of 5.5 and 7.5. But then it also says 5 and 7 then a shoe size of 5.5 and 7.5. So we're going to be comparing these, which means we're going to subtract. So let's go ahead and get started with our math. So I'm going to look for 5 and 7, and what I'm going to do is box it in so that way it makes it easier for me to look what these shoe sizes are, or how many students have these shoe sizes. 5, and then my 7. So as I have my 5 and 7, I'm going to go ahead and count those numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I have 9 for 5 and 7. And now our next set is 5.5 and 7.5. Let's see how many are there. 5.5, 1, 2, 7.5, 3. So that means I had 3 total of 5.5 and 7.5. And I said we're comparing these, so if we're comparing, we're going to subtract. Before I subtract, I just want to explain that you notice how I boxed these in? Again, it helps me keep my work organized and lets me know what I'm subtracting, what I'm adding, lets me know what I'm working with. You see, we're not doing anything with the 6, so I can ignore that and not focus on that. I can only focus on these sets of shoe sizes here. Now let's go ahead and do this math problem. Very simple. 9 minus 3. 9 minus 3 is 6. So there are 6 more students who have a shoe size of 5 and 7 than a shoe size of 5.5 and 7.5. So I'm gonna clear my board. I'm gonna put another problem up that we're gonna work together, and I'm just gonna do a couple pieces of that problem and you're gonna do some more, and then after that I'm gonna give you an exit ticket for y'all to go ahead and do on your own. All right, so I'm gonna put up a frequency table for you to copy down. me move it a little bit over so I have room to draw the next part. So we have a scientist, our story problem talks about a scientist who measures the length of different bugs. Here we have the different labels for the insects, and then we have the measurements in centimeters of the bugs in length. So this is our frequency table that we have, and why do we have this? It's because it's the data that was collected, and now our job is to create a data plot. So what I want you to do now is pause this video, copy this down, so that way you can have this in your journal to refer back to in order for you to create your data plot. Okay, so hopefully you have this in your journal or whatever you're writing on. So what we're going to do next is create a number line for our data plot. Draw a line across like that. And now we have to title this data plot. Our title is Insect Lengths. And then right here, what we're going to do is we're going to figure out what our lengths, well, we're going to put our lengths here. So on this side number line, we're going to find our lowest length. If we look through here, we have 1.5, 2.5, and then we have 1/2, 3, 1, 1.5. So this lets us know if we look down, the half is our lowest or our smallest measurement. So I'll put half. And then we're going to count by halves for the rest of the number line. So go ahead and do that, or you can just watch me do it and copy it as I do it. 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5. So, you know what? I noticed something here. Let me go ahead and put 3 like that. So, now that I've labeled this, this is going to be labeled our lengths. And there's one important thing that we need to add here that isn't on here yet. It's one of our vocabulary words that we talked about earlier in the lesson. Well, we have frequency table and dot plot. What's the other word that we talked about? Key. We need a key. Our key lets us know what each dot represents. We're going to say 1 dot equals 1 insect. So once we've done that, let's count how many we have. For the half, we have 1, just 1. For 1 centimeter, we have 1 also. For 1.5, we have 1, 2, 3. What I want you to do now is pause this video so you can finish the rest of the dot plot and come back, and I'll have mine completed also. All right, so I've completed mine. I hope you completed yours. So there was no 2, so we left it nothing there. We put no dots there because there's nothing there. 2.5, we had 2, and then for 3, we had 1. 3.5, we had none, so it's blank also. So now we can complete our dot plot. This lets you help answer any questions that you may have. So I'm going to write a question right here for you to, I'm going to write 2 questions here for you to solve. Actually, I'm going to erase some of this so that way there's room. Our first question is, how many insects were measured? That's our first question. Second question is, how many insects are less than 1.5 centimeters? So write these questions in your journal. You use the dot plot to help you, answer these questions. Go ahead and do that. And when you're done with that, come back and I'll have an exit ticket for you to copy down and to work on your own. All right, so what you have here is your exit ticket. You have a title of attendance of a museum. These are the age group of the students that attended the museum, and you have your key. Pay attention to your key because that's going to help you answer this problem. And this is our question up here. Go ahead and copy this into your journal, or you'll have to pause the video and copy this into your journal. But before you do that, here are some tips and some things that I can help you remind you of what we just learned. So under 10, remember, use your pencil or marker, whatever you're writing with, to draw a line to see what area you need to focus on. That's going to help you answer this problem. So go ahead and pause the video, copy this down in your journal, and then you're going to solve it. And then when you come back, we're going to just recap our lesson for today. Okay. So today's lesson, we were in the unit of data. So you're able to see how a frequency table, you can collect information and put it in a frequency table and use that frequency table to change it into a dot plot. So that way it can help you answer any questions that you may have regarding dot plots. So you've done a couple things today. You were able to create a frequency table, a dot plot, and really understand how a key works in a graph or chart. So I hope you learned something great today and that you can take it back with you and be able to use it whether it's in the real world or in your classroom. So I just hope you have a great day today and thank you for watching HISD TV.